I'm grateful for what God has done in Joe's life, because I know that he has a story to tell, and this is not the only time he will share it. He and Natalie both, I believe God has laid a mandate, a calling on their heart to be able to share their story with people that need to hear there is hope. So I'm just going to sit down.
Okay.
Give Joe a big hand.
All right, the time has come. Some people have been waiting. No. All right. Can we just go to the Lord in prayer, please? Dear Lord, I thank you for this time you've given me to share my story, my testimony, and how you have worked in my life, Lord, and the things you have brought me through and the things I've gone through, Lord. And as a young boy, knowing that something was there, but not knowing what it was, that something was watching over me and I didn't know what it was. I've come to realize and come to trust in that it was you. And I thank you for everything you've done in my life and everything you're doing and everything you're going to do, Lord. I just ask that you give me the wisdom to share with everybody your greatness and how you love each and every one of us, regardless of what we do or what we've done or things we've said, that your love is never failing. It never stops. It never ceases. It's always there. And I thank you for that, Jesus, and I love you. Amen. All right, I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. I ain't from around here. No, I'm not. I didn't plan nothing. I'm just going to roll with it. I grew up, my mom and dad got divorced when I was young. I think I was under 2 years old. And we went to a Catholic church. I can't remember going at all. I just knew we went. And I remember where it was, and I remember the car ride to it. But I didn't listen. I fell asleep most of the time because I was a young kid. And I knew of God. I knew who God was. My mom talked about God periodically, and but I didn't know anything about him. I didn't study his word. I didn't read the Bible. I didn't do any of that. And I grew up, I guess you could say, kind of lost, not knowing who God was. It was just me, my mom, and my sister growing up. I saw my dad every other weekend until I was about 16. So out of a 365-day year, I got to see my father 50 of them. Which kind of, I don't know. It's all right. I grew up not having no direction, not having a manly figure to show me how to do things. I mean, I did when I went and saw my dad, but just, it was a little tough. I grew up kind of under two women, an older sister and my mother. And Mike even tells me today, you got to man up, man up. No, which I need to hear, because it just wasn't there growing up. And I got mixed up in the wrong crowd, mixed up with the wrong people at a young age. I remember I was 12 years old, I started using drugs. And it all was a snowball effect from there. I used drugs, I sold drugs. I was a bad person. I ain't gonna stand here and lie to you. I was a real bad person. And it just progressed worse and worse and worse. And the devil was like, I got you so tight. And I didn't know where to turn, so I just kept rolling with the punches. Get knocked down, try and get back up on my own 2 feet, not knowing that someone was there with his hand out, wanting me to grab it. And I've been through a lot of traumatizing things, I guess you could say. I don't want to talk about the bad, I want to talk about the good, because the bad is in the past and it's forgotten in God's eyes. And but just to let you know a few things I've been through. Everything could progress to about the hardest thing you could think of, and I was addicted to heroin for a long time. In 2007, my dad's girlfriend at the time, she had a son named Joey. My dad's name was Joe. and I was Joe. So there was 3 Joes in the house. I came home from work one day, and I was living with my dad after I got my license, and I was older because I didn't want to live with my mom anymore. Or I was just out, didn't want to. I could go to my dad's, do what I wanted to do, leave, and didn't have no consequences, didn't have nothing. As long as I showed up to work, everything was fine. And I worked a long day that day, and I was sick because I didn't get a fix that morning. And I ran home, I ran upstairs, and I did what I had to do, I guess, to feel better. And that's the last thing I remember. And I laid in my bed, and I guess my stepbrother, well, I called him my stepbrother, his name was Joey, he came upstairs, and I was gone. My body had drained itself of all its fluids. I was blue, and that's the last I remember. I wasn't breathing, I didn't have a heartbeat. The paramedics pronounced me DOA. I was dead when they showed up. It was for, I got some paperwork, and I showed Beth because she works in the medical field and everything, and she was looking at it, and I didn't even know what I was reading, but I shouldn't be, she even said I shouldn't be alive right now. And by the grace of God, I am here because He wrote the book of my life before I was ever formed in my mother's womb. And it wasn't my time to go. Besides all that, I mean, and it didn't stop me. Within months later, I woke up in the hospital in the same week. From what I can remember, it was the nurse never took off. She was still working in those 2 times I showed up. And the second, I showed up on a Saturday, and I got to the hospital at like midnight, and I woke up about 4 a.m., didn't know where I was, what happened, anything. And the nurse said, when you came in on an overdose, I forgot who I was with. I didn't know anything that was going on. And it was Saturday, and I had a big job for my dad. So I woke up at 4 a.m. in the hospital, and I said, shoot, I got to get to the house. I got to go to work. So I pulled the IVs out of my arm. I put my clothes on. The nurse was like, what are you doing? And I said, I got to go. I got to get to work. And I ran almost 2 miles from the hospital to my dad's house to make it home for work in time. And he didn't know a thing that happened. I didn't let him know. I hid a lot of things from a lot of people for a long time. And that was on a Saturday. That Wednesday, I showed up in the hospital again. And the nurse, same nurse, everything. And I woke up, and she was bawling, just crying. And I said, what happened? She's like, you showed up again, overdosed. And I was like, dang, I'm sorry. I didn't know what to say. And she cried, and I was like, what's wrong? Like, what's wrong with you? Why are you crying? It's not a big deal. I'll be fine. I'm awake. It's fine. I always thought that anything that happened, it would just, as long as I thought it'd be fine, I just tried to block everything out. And she cried, and she said, I got a son out using drugs on the streets. And I've seen you twice in the past 4 days over this stuff. And I said, look, you do everything you can to get your son clean because this stuff is killing people. And it's hard to stop. Nothing, I mean, I wouldn't stop for nothing. And then I got in trouble. I'm a felon. I'm a 4-time felon. I got 4 felonies on my record. It doesn't matter. The time I had over my head, the time I done served, everything didn't matter because as soon as I hit them streets, I was looking to get high again. I was looking to score. And nothing could stop me. And then finally one time, after being incarcerated for over the period of a couple years, I had maybe a few months of freedom. And I was locked up for a while, in and out of behind bars, rehabs. Nothing would change me. Nothing got me to even think of changing. And I went in the last time for a probation violation because I was dirty. And I said, well, here we go again. This is the last straw. They're about to crucify me. And I knew they were. And I went to court. And the judge in the state of Ohio was on the other side, and they said, we're done with him. He's been here 2-3 times. He's getting the rest of his time. The judge said, okay, that's fine. He's getting the rest of his time. I mean, I'm done. I'm sick of seeing him. And I was sick of seeing him too. And the judge asked me, do you have anything to say for yourself? And I stood up. My lawyer's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Don't say nothing. And I stood up and I said, Your Honor, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of living. I'm tired of dying. I'm sick of all this. I don't want to live like this anymore. I don't want to wake up and try and find something to do, to get some money, to get some drugs, to get high and all this. It's just, I'm tired of this. There's so much more to life in my mind than this, day after day after day. And he said, well, what do you want to do? I said, I have a friend I grew up with. I've used with him. I partied with him. I've done everything under the sun with this kid. And his name is Corey McCourt. And I walked in, they put me in the pod months ago, and it's a dark, gloomy place. Satan is everywhere inside, behind them bars. And he's in the corner, glowing. I mean, this kid there's beams of light coming off him, and it was ridiculous. And nobody saw it, nobody was sitting by him, nobody was nothing, but I noticed him, and there's 40-something people in there, and I looked, and I was like, who is that? Because, I mean, he was literally glowing in the corner of the cell. And then I seen it was my friend, and I said, where have you been? What are you doing? Like, fancy meeting you here. No. And I came, and he was reading this. And we talked and we caught up, and he said, look, man, I was doing just as bad as you were. He had all kinds of stuff against him, and he was in trouble. And he said, I moved down to Alabama a couple years ago, and I got in trouble here. And I served time down there. And then from getting in trouble down there, they put me in this program called Teen Challenge. And I said, Teen Challenge? You're 25 years old. What are you talking about? You're not a teenager. And he said, no, it's not like that. It's about God. And I said, what? He said, yeah, it's like a Christian discipleship rehab program that's a year long. And I said, okay. And in my mind, my street mind, I'm still thinking, oh, it's a year long. They might go for that and just let me do this and then be out. And I stood up in front of the judge and I told him, I said, look, I had a buddy in there who completely changed his life. I've drank, drug, partied with him for 20 years, and he is not the same person I know or knew. And I said, while we were sitting in there, we wrote letters back and forth, and I'm accepted into this Teen Challenge program. It is a year long. This is what's going to change my life. This is what's going to help me get past the dark, get past everything, and live for God. I didn't know that at the time, but that's what it did. And the judge looked at me, and he called the state of Ohio into his chambers, and they were gone, and my lawyer went in there, and he came out and he said, look, I mean, the state wanted you to go away. I was tired of seeing you. I wanted you to go away. And but what you've said, I'm going to let you do it. If something happened, he said, I'm going to let you go to this program, whether it be in Ohio, Florida, Alabama, whichever one, I'm going to let you go. And I said, okay, great. He said, I'm going to release you on December 29th. It was like October, I think. He's like, I'm going to release you on December 29th, and you have to be in this program by January 3rd. And I got released December 29th, and getting in trouble and all that stuff. I was still trying to better my life under my own understanding while I wasn't locked up. So I tried to enroll myself in community college and go back to school while I was working with my dad and all this. And while I was in jail that time, my FAFSA came through. I had all my student loans and everything, and I didn't even get to go back to school, but you know, God works in mysterious ways, because I'm sitting in jail and I get a check to go back to school. Well, I'm not going back to school because I have to go to Teen Challenge. I didn't have the money to go to Teen Challenge. I didn't have the money to get a plane ticket down there. I didn't know how anything was going to work. But now, standing here today, you don't have to understand how it's going to work, because God's got this. And So I used that money to buy the plane ticket and get everything I needed and go down to Teen Challenge. Well, I got released on December 29th, and I was in Alabama by January 3rd. And I walk in this place, and my plane landed late, and it was late in the evening, and everyone, they already ate, and they're getting ready to go to bed. And I walk in, and the lights are all dimmed, and Christian music is playing. I've never heard Christian music a day in my life. And these people are standing there praising God, and I said, what in the world did I get myself into? And I was like, man, this is like a cult. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. And time went by, and my brother, well, not my brother, but Corey McCourt, he had, down here, it's how you get in trouble, it's a different kind of system, but he was, after he finished the program, he turned himself in because he was running from some charges back in Ohio. That's how I met him in jail. And you want to hear God works in mysterious ways. He went in front of his judge and had about 30 years over his head for everything that he had done. And the judge let him go. Wow. Dismissed all charges, dismissed everything, and he came back down to Alabama. And then he was over top of me. He was an intern, but he was a teacher, and he took us places, and he did things with the students. And it was real cool because it was someone I could relate to. It was someone who could show me, who could tell me, because we grew up together, that old has passed away, you are a new creation in Christ. And they did all kinds of things at Teen Challenge because it was a 501c3 organization. It was all that stuff. So we had to do things to keep the doors open. We had to do things for people who didn't have the money to come in. We did all these programs. And one of the really cool programs that we did was called DAPS. It was a drug awareness program. And we'd go out and we'd stand in front of Walmart for Friday and Saturday, and we would take donations. But the cool thing was we got to witness to people. And I was brand new, but just within a month of being there, like a weight was lifted off me. A peace came over me, and a love came in my heart that I could not describe. And I've been I got this Bible from Corey before I got out, and a CO, a correction officer, he called me by the thing, and I didn't know what was going on. He said, Cartulla, come to the door. And I was like, oh, I might have a clergy visit, or I might have my mom, or somebody might be here to see me, because it wasn't a visiting hours, but sometimes you get privileges. And he gave me this Bible, and I didn't even know what it was. I thought it was a book until I seen the side where it said Bible, because I can't remember one I've had before this. And on the inside it says, hey buddy, I wanted to do something for you for making this decision to transform your life for the better. We can all be born again through the blood of Jesus Christ. I couldn't think of a better way to do it than to give you this book. It is the strongest tool you could have to help conquer anything you may struggle with in life. I'm very happy you have decided to take this journey to better your life. I'm always here for anything you may need. Love, your brother Corey. And I started reading this thing before I ever even got to Teen Challenge. And then I started digging into this thing when I got to Teen Challenge. And I had a buddy in there named Paul Cosby, and he was older than me, and he grew up in church like all of y'all. He grew up in religion, and he was real knowledgeable, knew a lot about the Bible, knew a lot about the Word of God. And I kind of got up under his wing, and because he wouldn't try and tell me anything he believed, or he wouldn't try and tell me anything he knew. He would just tell me what this said, and we would talk about it. And a verse that stuck out to me since I got there, and it's crazy because Mike teaches on Wednesday nights, and a lot of things he teaches on, and a lot of things Miss Lou teaches on and talks about, it already had underlined. It already stuck out to me some way or some way, and I'm sorry, I'm jumping all over the place. I'm a little nervous. I didn't plan any of this, but my whole life, I knew something was there, like I said earlier. I knew something was watching over me, I guess you could say. And, but I thought I wasn't good enough. You know, Mike always talks about unworthy Wednesday nights, and the devil wants you to think you're unworthy and you're not good enough and you're defeated, but you're not. You're not. Romans 8:28 through 31. I'm going to read this real quick. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. For those who foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the likeness of his Son, that he might be the firstborn among many brothers. And those he predestined, he also called. Those he called, he also justified. Those he justified, he also glorified. What then shall we say in response to this? If God is for us, who can be against us? And in my mind, the first time I read that, and the first time they taught on that, I thought to myself, God chose me. Not for anything spectacular, anything super or nothing, but just because I felt like that one lost sheep. And he left the 99, and he came to find me. And he came to save me one way or another, through troubles, through getting locked up, through all this stuff. It's like he knew all that was going to happen. And it took me a while to figure out that all the heartache and all the troubles and everything were for a purpose. And I know what that purpose was. It was so I can know who he is and realize what being on this earth is about. So I went through Teen Challenge. We did these, back to these DAPS programs. We got to witness to people. And I remember a young girl and a little boy coming out of Walmart. And she threw some change in the bucket as she walked in, and she came back out, and she's like, I've been thinking about you two standing here the whole time we went shopping. And I know what Teen Challenge is. And she came to me and my friend Craig, because we did the DAPS. Mainly they wanted us to do the DAPS because we were good talkers and we could talk to people, and we came back with the most money. But she came out there and she said, look, I need prayer. And I was like, oh, shoot. I could tell you about Teen Challenge and everything, but the Lord was there. And there was a little girl, well, she was driving 16, 17 years old, and she had her little brother. And she said, my mom and my dad fight all the time. Me and my brother get scared, and we don't know what to do. And would you mind praying for us? So me, my friend Craig, this girl, and her little brother we all held hands and we prayed. And that was the first time that I can remember that God used me to help somebody else, I guess. And I opened my eyes, and she's bawling. And out of nowhere, I started crying. And I was like, look, it's going to be okay. Just don't worry about your mom and your dad. Jesus has got you guys. Don't worry about a thing. And that did something to me. And just opening my mouth and praying for this boy and this girl, that did something to me that can't nobody ever unchange. And I kept going through Teen Challenge. The first part of it was like 4 months long. And it was great. I came to know God. I gave my life to the Lord. I accepted him in my life as my Lord and Savior. And things were looking great. I kept in contact with my folks back home through letters. And I got a visit really from my dad my 3rd or 4th month in. He came and saw me because he was going down and back from Florida. And he shot over to Alabama and visited me. And that was really nice. And then I moved on to the second phase, and I realized how this world can change people and take their sight off what's really important. And the director there and staff members there and teachers there shouldn't even have been there in my eyes. They were doing drugs with students who are trying to change their lives, and I witnessed some things that I just said, no, this ain't right. And The program was 12 months long. I was there for 11 months and a couple days, and I packed a bag in the middle of the night and I left. And I had years over my head, and I didn't care, because what I had come to know in those 11 months and what I trusted in and what I believed in, I couldn't be there another day. And I left. And I called my probation officer up in Ohio, and I said, look, Craig, I left. He's like, what are you talking about? I said, I packed a bag in the middle of the night and I'm not in Teen Challenge anymore. He said, Joe, you got like another couple weeks and you're a free man. Get yourself in a program, get me a diploma, and we'll write all this off, except for all the money I owed him. But so I called my friend's mom, who I was in Teen Challenge with, Craig. I called her, and I slept in the woods that night, and I smelled real bad, and I needed a shower, and I was hungry, and she said, I'll come get you, but I can't be there till about 3 the next day. So that night I slept in the woods, and everybody woke up at Teen Challenge, and they knew I wasn't there. So the way it was set up, there was a gas station, and there was a big old hill, and the woods were all up there. I got from the center, which was about 1.5 miles away, up into those woods, and I slept in those woods that night. And I was watching for her van all morning, and I was watching for the police cars all morning, because they were looking for me. They knew I ran, they knew I needed to get back to the center, and I was not going back. So I finally seen her pull up, and she pulled into the car wash, and I ran down this hill, and mind you, there was like 4 cop cars just circling this little town by Tuscaloosa. If anyone's ever been to the raceway, you go down that road, then you hang a right, and there's 2 gas stations there, and then up that way is the Teen Challenge Center. Well, I run down this hill, and I'm hiding behind stuff, and a cop car goes by, and I run and hide behind something else, and she's throwing stuff away in her van, and the door's wide open, and I book it to the van, and I jump in, and I'm like, go, go, go. And she's like, what is going on? Why did you leave? What's going on? I said, let's just get out of here. Let's just get back to Opelika, and we'll figure it out, and I'll tell you everything on the way. And so we went back to Auburn, Opelika area. I told her the whole story on the way, and I said I could not take it anymore, Dana. I literally could not take another day of all the practices and everything that was going on there. And so she had a friend, because she worked at an eye clinic, she had a friend that had a ministry, the same ministry that Natalie went through. And she said, let me make a few phone calls, we'll see if we can get you in, and we'll go from there. And I didn't have no money, I didn't have nothing to get in this program, and the director there, I told him my whole story, I told him why I left, I told him what I had been through and everything, and he said, you know what, you ain't got to go through our classes, you ain't got to do none of this, just be good for 30 days and I'll give you a diploma, basically. And he let me have kind of free reign, I did what I wanted. I kind of made some friends that were in his program and talked with them, and I got a bicycle. And that was kind of the first time in my life I felt, while I was free, I felt free. I got this bicycle and I rode this sucker all around Opelika. Every day I'd sit on different stoops around different buildings, and I'd pull this word out, or I'd call Natalie, and because that was after me and Natalie met. Before I was allowed to leave there, first time we met was at the thrift store, and you heard this last week. I'm sitting there up in the front waiting for chapel to start, and in walks this long, red-haired woman that I just said, I got to go talk to her. And like she said last week, we talked all day, and we actually got in trouble for talking because we were supposed to be working. And then she left, and I was like, dang, I didn't get a phone number, a Facebook, an email, or nothing. And so I went back to the center that night, and I had my own room. I shared a room with a friend, and I told him about this girl I met that day. And he said, you never know what's going to happen. You never know what could happen. And the next day was Sunday, and I walked into church. I think it was like the second time I've been to Grace Falls. Never been to that church or anything. I opened the doors, and there was Natalie, First person I locked eyes with. She was wearing that dress too. And I said, "What are you doing here?" I looked up and I knew it wasn't. This was another incident where God's like, "I got this. I got this." And church ended, and Natalie went to go put something in the car, get something out the car and everything. And I said, "All right, well, here's my shot. Come on, Joe, get some courage." And I walked up to the car, and I said, "Hey, what are you doing here?" and all this stuff. And she said, "Nothing. I'm about to go home." I think you were going home that night back to Quitman. And I said, "Well, look, I'm going to be here for another couple weeks. Mind if I get your phone number?" And, and she said, "Yeah." And, well, you guys know the rest. But just the heartaches and the troubles and the being lost feeling growing up. If I could say anything to anybody who's struggling with anything, get one of these. Start reading this. God has done so much for me in my life in such a short period of time, because I try to do everything myself. I could fix this, I could do this, I could make it better. But you can't. I mean, you could try and try and try till you're blue in the face. And without God, I mean, life is hard. Life is real hard. And you can make it. I mean, but something will be there. I don't know. You cannot talk to a person in your whole life about your troubles, about stuff you go through, about stuff you deal with from your past. And trust me, Natalie has a hard time with me because I don't talk about a lot of things. I sit there and I'm quiet because I'm thinking. I'm remembering, not reminiscing, but as things go through my head. And I mean, I'm like a steel onion. It's hard to peel these layers back. But she's trying, and she's doing a good job. I mean, God has worked so much in my life. I give it all to Him. I mean, I've been reading lately in Acts and stuff like that, and Galatians, Ephesians. Without Him, I am nothing. Okay, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm nothing without God. And the things He has laid on my heart, and I was talking with Miss Lou earlier. I drove home from work the other day, and I was preaching to myself. And she said, "Well, I'm not going to be here forever." I said, whoa, don't get any ideas. But I was preaching a sermon to myself, and it was so different because, like Mike said, I'm the lucky one, I guess. I didn't grow up in church. I didn't grow up with religion. I didn't have nothing I had to forget to learn. I just started from the bottom and took this for what it was, not for what people tried to take out and put in and all this stuff. And gosh, I mean, I don't know where I'm going with this. God has blessed me so much, saved me from so much. I got 2 beautiful children. That are just amazing. I got a beautiful wife who I couldn't do this without. And great family. I mean, everyone around me. I thank every one of you for encouragement and the love and everything. I don't know what else to say. That's it. Thank you.
I think what you could say is, if He would do it for Joe, He'll do it for you. And no matter how difficult life gets at times, God has a way and a plan for you. And I think He started out saying, there was a book written about me. Daddy God had a book written about me before I was ever put in my mother's womb. And if we can ever, each one of us, get a hold of that individual thought but when God created you, He wrote a book about you, what your destiny would be in life. And so, to go off the path and not know God and all of the things, I love it. Don't you love it? Grace, grace, grace.